and welcome to Valemount Votes. This is our series of interviews with candidates for the upcoming municipal election. We're also talking to candidates for the school board and for the regional district. And with me today is Don Sabo, who's a candidate for the school trustees for school district number 57. And I want to read his bio first, and then we'll get right into talking with Don. Don Sabo holds an associate degree in business administration. He was on the board of directors for the Prince George Native Friendship Center for 4 years. More recently, he was on the board for the Prince George YMCA. He is currently a member of School District number 57 Aboriginal Education Board. He has always believed that education is critical to the success of our children. He takes an active role in his child's education by serving as a Pinewood Elementary School Parent Advisory Committee member for the last 5 years, and has also been a chair of Prince George District number 57 PAC for 3 years. A large part of Don's work history consulting career has consisted of work with an industrial adjustment services program, which was funded by the province, federal government, and industry clients. The word adjustment means change, so in a sense, Don has extensive experience evaluating the need for change, implementing change, and managing change. Some of the knowledge, skills, and abilities Don can bring to the school board table are leadership, team building, critical thinking, and evidence-based decision-making, strategic planning, policy development. He has an extensive communications background and is an outspoken advocate when it comes to education issues. Don Sabo, welcome.
Pleased to be here.
Great. So let's get right into it. Why don't you start by telling us what is your platform for this election?
Well, a plank in my platform, a big one, is geographic representation on the school board. This is a very big school district, so what we're looking at is a school board that really should reflect the entire district. So there's 7 seats on the School District 57 board, and I believe that it's time that 2 of those seats actually were allocated for rural communities and rural areas. So I'm proposing that 1 seat be set aside for Mackenzie District, and the other seat be set aside for the Robson Valley District.
Great. And what do you believe that will do for the school board?
I believe that it will provide a direct voice from the outlying communities right into the board and on the board. I think that the school district needs to be more inclusive. I don't believe that it has been as inclusive as it can be, and this is a way of including the smaller outlying communities and giving them a better voice.
Right. Well, there's a number of issues facing schools in general and schools in the Robson Valley and in rural communities as well. What do you see as the biggest issues facing school board in general right now?
There's a problem with declining enrollment, and at the same time it goes hand in hand. It's related to reduced funding. So those are real challenges. I know that there was a number of school closures that happened 3 years ago. In fact, Prince George lost half of its schools. The small village of Dunster lost its school during that whole wave of closures. I'm the type of person, if I get elected to the school board, you won't see closures. I believe that a school needs to stay open. If it's only a quarter full or a half full, the other half or 3/4 can be used for a community center or a daycare or a health clinic, anything to do with the community, as long as you keep the other part of the school remaining a school, and it's very workable that way. So I don't agree with just closing schools because the enrollment gets down to a certain point, and I would be one of the powers that be that decides that the school should close. I don't believe in closing schools.
Great. Well, that is a big problem here for Valemount. It's a small town that's been affected by a mill closure and declining population. We're kind of sort of on the rebound a little bit in terms of number of children attending the elementary school level at least, but our high school has condensed quite a bit, and they're doing everything they can to provide the education that our students need. It is a difficult situation to meet the needs of especially the senior students and getting the credits that they need to graduate. What do you see as a solution for that in terms of how will a school hold on till they can get the numbers back up in terms of providing the education level that's required at the provincial level?
Yeah, there can be funding allocations. The rural schools usually have additional funding to them. I know that you have this economies of scale where the larger schools are financially easier to operate because of economies of scale, but as you get smaller and smaller and schools get smaller and the enrollment gets smaller, it becomes a bit more costly. But I think the viewers have to remember that back in the 1920s and the 1930s, there was nothing but 1- and 2-room schoolhouses. This is how education grew and grew. Well, once you get into this area of recession or retraction, and industries leave and people leave, and you get smaller and smaller schools, you can see, I'm still a strong proponent that you really need to have those schools there. So the big thing would be to ensure that there's sufficient funding for 1 or 2 teachers. Maybe condense the classes down. I know that happens even in the Prince George schools, where you'll have a class that may be 3 grades for 1 teacher. But at least you're still delivering them. You still have a school. So there's ways of saving money, but at the same time, delivering that education.
One of the solutions that they are doing now is blended education. They're doing online components for some students and other things. So I think the time is at hand that we need to get really creative on how we do this in terms of how we do it. And you're right, we have a beautiful school here. It's a relatively new school that is space-wise underutilized for a lot of things. So perhaps we can work with the community a little bit more and come up with some solutions for that. I want to ask you about, it's been a very difficult year for schools in general, for education in terms of the strike. It was a very prolonged and quite bitter strike, and the teachers are back. Some of them maybe not too happy with the way they went back to work and the deal that they went. How do you see mending those fences that have been...
Yeah, that's a good point, Gordon. Right now, teacher morale is at an all-time low in the district and probably in the province. They were fairly upbeat going, into the summer. They had a brief strike there, and then when the fall came and there was no movement and there was more strike action, they've become disheartened, to tell you the truth. And as a school board, we are the ones that need to make sure that we set the culture and the climate within the school district and within the schools. So I think that, myself, I can't speak for the other members, but I would probably, if I was elected, get together with all the stakeholders, and that would be the Mayor and Council of Valemount, Mayor and Council of McBride, as well as Mackenzie and Prince George, and come together and at one big professional development day for teachers, where they're all together, do a presentation and proclaim that we are just as much behind them and stand with them, in support for reasonable class size and composition. It's an interesting thing because they're really fighting for that, and I think you really have to think hard and say, what's the difference between a teacher's working conditions and a child's learning conditions when it comes to class size and composition? They're the same thing. You can't separate them. Right. And the teachers need to hear that, and they need to hear it from the leaders in the communities that they serve and from the school board.
Right, in terms of making it a priority.
Exactly, right. Exactly. And let them know that they're not alone, that we stand with them.
Great. I guess the question would be, this is your first shot at running for the school board. Why Don Sabo? What do you bring to this?
Well, I have extensive experience working on boards. I've been very community-minded, and I am a leader. I like to see change only when change is necessary. And I believe, for instance, the Robson Valley and Mackenzie having its own school trustee is a needed change, and a needed voice. So I look at situations and I say, how can we make things better? So I'm a very good analyst in that sense. But there's a number of things that I can change with the rest of the board and make this a better school district. That's what it's all about. I've always had an interest in education. I've taken an interest in my son's education since before he even went to school. He knew his alphabet and he could count to 100 right into kindergarten. And I believe strongly that a good education is a key to a child's success, to make them a more valuable contributing member of society. So we really need that. We really need the education, the quality public education, and it's been taking some hits as far as funding and cuts back, and cuts go. And I'm a strong advocate. I'll stand up, and I'll stand up loudly and strongly. I'll have a strong voice in those matters when it comes to making sure that the communities in the school district get their fair shake as far as public education funding.
Excellent. Anything you'd like to add that we haven't discussed?
Not really. It's just a word. If I do get voted in, it is 7 people that sit on the school board, and I will try as hard as I can to make sure that next election, the good people of Valemount and McBride will be electing their own school trustee.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay, Gordon.
Thanks.
All right.